give them a bigger picture, and they can relax more into it rather than be really anxious about what are you hiding from me, what do I not know, why is that happening? There's a lot more questions.
The refusal lasted only seconds, yet those few words sent a ripple through the palace that no official statement could erase. Queen Camilla stepped forward, expecting to escort Princess Charlotte into one of the most closely guarded moments of her royal preparation. Before anyone could react, Prince William calmly moved between them. "I'll take my daughter from here." The corridor froze. No one spoke. No one intervened. In that instant, every carefully planned expectation appeared to collapse. What happened next would fuel weeks of speculation about private meetings, rewritten palace instructions, and a decision William may have made long before that morning ever arrived. Prince William did not hesitate. Before Queen Camilla's outstretched hand could reach Princess Charlotte, he calmly stepped forward, placed himself beside his daughter, and said in a voice quiet enough to avoid a scene yet firm enough to end the moment, "I will take Charlotte from here." The corridor fell into complete silence. Senior palace officials stopped moving. Staff members lowered their eyes. Charlotte looked from her father to Camilla, sensing that something far greater than a simple escort had just unfolded. Within seconds, what should have been a routine royal ceremony had become the beginning of a confrontation that, according to persistent palace speculation, had been building long before anyone entered that hallway.
Trying to sort of balance protecting the children, Catherine. My father needs a bit of protection, but he's old enough to do that himself as well. But it's important my family feel protected.
No raised voices echoed through the palace. No dramatic argument broke out in front of waiting officials. Yet those who later claimed to have knowledge of the day's events would describe that brief refusal as one of the most significant personal boundaries Prince William had ever drawn. If those accounts are accurate, this was never simply about who walked beside Princess Charlotte. It was about who would influence the future of a young royal as she gradually prepared for the responsibilities that awaited her. Before the truth behind that extraordinary moment is explored, there is one question every viewer should consider. If you discovered that someone had begun making important plans involving your child, without first asking you, would you quietly accept it, or would you step in immediately, no matter who stood in front of you? Keep that answer in mind because it changes the way this entire story is viewed. Hi viewers, if you believe Prince William was right to put Princess Charlotte before palace expectations, don't just watch in silence. Subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who believes a parent should always protect their child first. Then leave one simple word in the comments. William, if you support his decision, or protocol, if you think palace tradition should have come first. Every opinion tells part of this story. If stories examining royal family mysteries, hidden palace dynamics, and the difficult choices behind famous headlines interest you, remember to subscribe now because the events that reportedly followed this moment became even more surprising than the refusal itself. Camilla's expression barely changed. Years spent under public scrutiny had taught her how to remain composed when every eye in the room seemed fixed upon her. Even so, several observers would later speculate that the surprise was impossible to hide completely. Her hand slowly lowered. The sealed folder she had been carrying remained tucked beneath her arm. Whatever expectations she may have carried into that corridor appeared to stop at the exact point where William calmly placed Charlotte beside himself. Charlotte did not understand the invisible lines being drawn around her that morning. She simply tightened her grip on her father's hand. To her, the hallway looked exactly as it always had. Rich carpets stretched toward heavy oak doors. Portraits of long-departed monarchs watched from gilded frames. Uniformed attendants stood quietly against polished walls. Nothing appeared unusual except the silence. Children often notice silence before they understand conflict, and according to those familiar with royal life, Charlotte sensed immediately that the adults around her were speaking through restraint rather than words.
I think she was quite known for her feisty personality, calculated attempt by William and Kate to just make sure that their children are allowed to grow up outside of the spotlight.
William never looked back. His attention remained fixed on the corridor ahead, where several senior officials waited outside the entrance to the Royal Trust offices. Reports describing the institution vary, and many details remain private, but it has often been portrayed as a protected administrative structure connected to the long-term preparation of younger members of the royal family. Whether every rumor surrounding its role is accurate remains uncertain. What mattered that morning was not the building itself. It was the symbolism attached to who guided Charlotte through its doors. Behind William, no one immediately followed. Several palace staff reportedly exchanged uncertain glances, each waiting for someone else to speak first. No instruction came. No objection was raised. According to later speculation from royal commentators, everyone present understood that intervening would only deepen an already delicate situation. Camilla remained exactly where she was. Those standing nearby would later claim that she continued holding the sealed folder tightly against her side. Its contents have never been publicly confirmed, leading to years of speculation among royal observers. Some believed it contained briefing papers connected to Charlotte's introduction. Others suggested it included advisory notes intended for private discussion after the ceremony. None of those claims have been officially verified. Yet one detail continued appearing across multiple accounts. Whatever had been prepared inside that folder was no longer relevant after William's refusal. Charlotte quietly glanced over her shoulder. For only a brief second, her eyes met Camilla's. There was no anger, no visible resentment. Only confusion. Children often search adults for reassurance when they sense emotions they cannot yet explain. Charlotte appeared to be doing exactly that. William noticed. Without slowing his pace, he gently rested his free hand on Charlotte's shoulder. He said nothing. The gesture itself carried enough reassurance. According to palace insiders quoted over the years, William had become increasingly careful about shielding his children from the complicated relationships that sometimes existed behind royal ceremony. Whether those reports fully reflect reality cannot be independently confirmed, but they fit the protective image many observers have associated with him. The large doors ahead slowly opened. Inside, several officials stood ready to begin Charlotte's scheduled introduction. Each had prepared for a formal morning. None had prepared to witness a refusal that would soon become the subject of endless palace speculation. As father and daughter crossed the threshold together, one senior figure reportedly whispered only 4 words. He expected this already. Those words changed everything. If William had truly expected Camilla's request before it happened, then the confrontation in the corridor was not spontaneous at all. It had been anticipated, prepared for, possibly even planned, which raised a far more unsettling question. What had William discovered before that morning that convinced him this moment was coming? The heavy iron gates of the private rehearsal wing swung shut with a muted thud that seemed to absorb all remaining warmth from the grand stone hall. High above the polished parquet floor, a solitary gilded chandelier flickered, casting long, sharp shadows across the velvet-draped dais where Princess Charlotte stood under the rigid guidance of her royal handlers. Before anyone could register the shift in protocol, Queen Camilla stepped directly into the illuminated circle. Her fingers brushed the edge of Charlotte's shoulder, guiding the young princess toward a specific marked position on the floor, far removed from the place designated for her parents. Camilla's voice carried an unquestioned authority as she began laying down firm, precise instructions regarding Charlotte's future duties at the upcoming Royal Trust ceremony. Standing in the dimly lit shadow of the arched entryway, Prince William froze. His jaw tightened as he watched his daughter hesitate, her small hands clutching her coat, looking around for a familiar face. No formal announcement had been made. No official briefing had taken place. Yet here, in the cold air of a private rehearsal space, an entirely different future was being assigned to Charlotte without his knowledge or consent. William did not raise his voice. He did not interrupt the rehearsal. He stood motionless, his eyes tracking every gesture, every whisper, every rigid line drawn around his daughter. The silence in the hall grew uncomfortably heavy as palace attendants gradually noticed the solitary figure waiting by the doorway.
The visits we made together left a deep and lasting impression. I've met so many extraordinary people and listened to so many heartbreaking personal stories. Too many people have found themselves without a stable and permanent place to call home. Through these visits, I have seen firsthand the breadth and complexities of homelessness.
The air turned brittle with unspoken tension. By midnight, the long corridors of William's private residence were dark, save for the single pool of amber light spilling across his desk. Spread out before him were the confidential briefing papers, advisory proposals, ceremonial drafts and sponsorship agreements for the Royal Trust. Page after page revealed a meticulously planned strategy. Specific clauses contained subtle sponsorship language that would tie Charlotte's public debut directly to Camilla's personal patronages. The documents treated Charlotte's future role as a settled matter, an arrangement already decided behind closed doors. Someone had quietly drafted a blueprint for his daughter's life, systematically bypassing parental authority under the guise of royal tradition. William leaned forward, resting his forehead against his hands as the weight of the realization set in. The institution he had served his entire life was attempting to claim his child before she was even old enough to understand the weight of the crown. A deep, quiet anger settled into his chest, replacing his initial shock with absolute clarity. Early the following morning, a private legal representative arrived at the palace under the cover of a routine administrative visit. In a secluded office far from the main administrative wing, William laid out the papers. There were no emotional outbursts, no bitter complaints about palace politics. There was only a calm, methodical instruction to rewrite every single clause of the Royal Trust arrangements. Every paragraph granting external advisory permissions over Charlotte was redrawn. Every line that bypassed parental consent was removed. Legal counsel worked in complete secrecy, drafting protective clauses that reinforced one undeniable truth: no ceremonial role, no public appearance, and no trust oversight involving Princess Charlotte would ever take place without the direct, explicit approval of her parents. While the legal revisions were underway, palace life continued its polished routine. Staff members moved through the gilded halls carrying schedules, arranging flowers, and preparing press releases. Behind the closed doors of private drawing rooms, however, confidential discussions grew increasingly guarded. Communications advisors held hurried, low-whisper briefings in quiet corners. Legal representatives exchanged sealed folders that were never left unattended. Those who noticed the subtle changes in schedule templates and briefing binders kept their observations to themselves. Rumors circulated through the household staff like a quiet draft through ancient stone passages. Some whispered that a rift was growing between the royal households. Others speculated that a fundamental disagreement over succession strategy was quietly unfolding beneath the surface of routine events. Yet on the surface, everything remained pristine. William ensured that no sign of friction escaped into the public eye. Every interaction, every formal gesture, every memo sent through official channels maintained an absolute standard of royal courtesy. The restraint was deliberate, a calculated shield designed to protect Charlotte from becoming the center of a public controversy before she had even grown up. Look at the length a protective father must go to just to shield his daughter from being manipulated by powerful forces within her own extended family. Ask yourself right now, if you saw someone quietly taking control of your child's future behind your back, would you have the courage to stand up and rewrite the rules, or would you sit back and let them take over? If you believe a child's path belongs to their parents and not to calculated palace politics, take a second right now to subscribe to this channel. Do not let these critical stories disappear into silence, because if you leave now without subscribing, you will miss the extraordinary moment when this hidden Cold War finally explodes into an open confrontation. The quiet strategy reached its breaking point on a grey Thursday afternoon. A formal request arrived from the Queen's private office. Camilla requested an urgent, highly private meeting to review the altered Royal Trust paperwork. She wanted answers about why the long-standing advisory language had been removed and why the ceremonial schedules had been stripped of her personal endorsements. William received the message while standing by his office window, watching Charlotte play on the manicured lawn below. He read the memo once, folded it neatly, and placed it on his desk. He did not ask for advice from his advisors. he did not attempt to stall the meeting. He simply replied with a brief, written confirmation agreeing to the time and location. Neither side knew that this upcoming meeting would permanently shatter the delicate balance of palace boundaries.
We saw that abiding love of tradition, together with that fearless embrace of progress, which makes us great as nations. The affection, admiration, and respect she inspired became the hallmark of her reign.
Neither side could foresee that the words spoken behind those closed doors would redefine royal protocol for generations to come. As the hour of the private meeting drew near, a profound hush settled over the private quarters. Palace officials cleared the adjoining corridors, ensuring absolute privacy for what was expected to be a brief administrative review. But those who knew the history of the house understood that this was never about administrative paperwork. William picked up the newly revised trust documents, secured them inside a plain leather binder, and walked down the long, quiet hallway toward the private room. Each step echoed against the marble floor with unyielding purpose. The door stood slightly ajar. Inside, Queen Camilla was already waiting, the original draft of the trust agreements held firmly in her hand. William reached the doorway, paused for a fraction of a second to compose his expression, and stepped into the room, closing the heavy oak door firmly behind him. The heavy oak door clicked shut with a sharp, definitive latch, sealing the high-ceilinged private room from the outside world. Queen Camilla did not wait for formal greetings. She slapped the original draft of the royal trust documents onto the mahogany table, her voice cutting through the thick silence like a blade, as she demanded to know why the long-established advisory permissions regarding Princess Charlotte had been unilaterally rewritten. Prince William stood completely motionless on the opposite side of the table, his demeanor cold and unyielding. He did not sit down. He did not reach for the papers she had thrown down. Instead, he placed his own plain leather binder onto the dark wood, looking directly into Camilla's eyes with a chilling composure that immediately shifted the power dynamic in the room. Camilla insisted that her proposed role was never meant to usurp parental authority. She argued that her involvement was designed solely to project an unbroken line of royal continuity, a tradition of senior family members guiding the next generation of heirs through critical constitutional trust milestones. Her tone carried the sharp frustration of a senior figure accustomed to deference, framed by an absolute belief that her experience was essential for the survival of the public image of the monarchy. William's response came in a low, dangerous register that barely carried across the quiet room. He made it clear that continuity could never be used as a convenient pretext for overriding a father's sacred right to guard his child's future. Charlotte was not a public asset to be managed by a committee, nor was she a prop to be utilized for institutional optics. Her early steps into royal life belonged exclusively under the jurisdiction of her parents. The argument rapidly escalated in psychological intensity as Camilla referenced an earlier, informal understanding she claimed to have reached with King Charles. She asserted that the king himself had recognized the value of her taking a visible, guiding hand in Charlotte's early civic introductions, suggesting that William was defying a strategic direction that had already received silent approval from the very top of the institution. A suffocating tension filled the space between them. William did not flinch at the mention of his father's name. Instead, he questioned whether any such informal agreement had ever possessed formal, legal legitimacy or parental consent. He reminded Camilla that no verbal understanding between others could ever bind his daughter's future, firmly shutting down the suggestion that the sovereign's quiet favor could bypass parental rights. Camilla leaned forward, pointing out that public division within the royal household would severely damage the fragile stability they had worked so hard to maintain. She warned that stripping her name from the trust paperwork so close to the ceremony would inevitably invite intense media scrutiny, sparking rumors of deep internal hostility that neither the palace nor the public could easily digest. William met her warning with absolute indifference to the threat of public fallout. He countered that the true threat to the institution was not the speculation of journalists, but the quiet erosion of trust within the family itself when boundaries were deliberately ignored behind closed doors. he made it crystal clear that if forced to choose between palace public relations and protecting Charlotte, he would dismantle protocol without a moment's hesitation. Every word exchanged in that room was laced with years of unexpressed tension, unspoken suspicion, and competing visions for the future of the crown. It was a psychological war of wills, fought in total secrecy, where every argument was grounded in duty, yet driven by deep personal convictions. Neither side yielded an inch of ground. The conversation eventually collapsed into a tense, agonizing silence. Camilla realized that no amount of appeals to tradition, institutional continuity, or informal arrangements with the king would shake William's resolve. Her expression hardened into a mask of cold pride, the realization setting in that the boundaries had been permanently drawn against her. William calmly gathered his papers, placed them back into his leather binder, and stood at full height. Without waiting for a dismissal or offering a traditional ceremonial bow, he stated that the revised terms were final and non-negotiable. The legal framework protecting Charlotte would stand exactly as he had rewritten it, regardless of who raised objections. Imagine standing by and letting someone else claim authority over your child's life while pretending it is all in the name of family tradition. If you turned your back on this video right now without subscribing, you would be choosing to ignore the hard truths about how far individuals will go to manipulate the vulnerable for their own power. Do not prove those who suppress these realities right by walking away. Subscribe to this channel right now, because if you leave now, you will miss the decisive moment when King Charles is forced to take a side in a feud that threatens to break the royal family apart. The moment William stepped out of the room, he did not return to his private quarters. He walked directly to his executive office and issued an immediate sweeping order to his senior legal representatives and private advisors. Every single agreement, trust document, advisory permission, and ceremonial schedule connected to Princess Charlotte across all royal foundations was ordered to undergo a comprehensive, unyielding legal audit. Every loophole was to be closed. Every ambiguity regarding parental authority was to be eliminated. William wanted absolute legal guarantees that no future attempt could ever be made to claim ceremonial or administrative authority over his children without explicit, written parental consent. Across the palace, the ripple effects of the confrontation spread rapidly through confidential channels. Senior staff members moved with visible unease, carrying sealed files between offices while avoiding any direct discussion of what had transpired behind the heavy oak door. The delicate balance that had governed the household for years had been permanently shattered. The outcome of the fierce private meeting remained completely unresolved, leaving a dangerous political vacuum within the highest levels of the royal establishment. The revised trust documents sat on the desk, awaiting a final authority, serving as a silent monument to an unyielding conflict. There was now only one authority left who possessed the constitutional power to intervene, override the revisions, or enforce the new boundaries. The fragile peace of the royal house hung in the balance, resting entirely on a choice that could no longer be delayed. Only King Charles could now resolve the bitter disagreement. King Charles slammed the thick legal dossier onto his private study desk, the heavy thud echoing off the ancient wood walls like a thunderclap. The golden seals of the royal trust glinted under the desk lamp, flanked by conflicting advisory memos, legal opinions, and the completely rewritten protocol papers. The sovereign stood alone in the center of the room, trapped between his duty as a monarch, his loyalty as a husband, and his quiet devotion as a father and grandfather. He knew every word in those documents carried the power to alter the internal hierarchy of his family forever. For hours, Charles paced the length of the carpeted floor in absolute silence, examining the brutal reality of the rift before him. To overrule William would be to crush his heir's explicitly stated parental rights, inflicting an unbearable strain on the direct line of succession. To overrule Camilla would mean publicly dismantling her authority within the household and exposing a profound personal defeat to the inner circle of palace courtiers. Without calling his private secretaries, Charles conducted a series of isolated, highly secretive audiences. He summoned William first into the secluded study, listening in grave silence as his son laid out his unyielding position with terrifying clarity. William did not present a negotiation. He presented a boundary that could not be crossed under any circumstances. Shortly after, the king met privately with Camilla, where the deep frustration of a queen consort seeking institutional continuity collided with the hard reality of a son's refusal. When the legal representatives of the royal trust were finally called into the room, the tension was unbearable. Senior officials braced themselves for an explosive royal decree or a forced compromise that would attempt to appease both sides. Instead, King Charles looked at the revised trust papers sitting on his desk, signed nothing that would alter William's text, and quietly chose not to intervene. His silence was a seismic decision. By refusing to override his heir, the king delivered a swift, unspoken judgment that permanently altered the balance of power inside the palace walls. The legal reality was instantly solidified. Parental authority over Princess Charlotte remained absolute, untouchable, and firmly in the hands of Prince William and Kate. The consequences swept through the royal estate like a cold winter wind. Palace officials scrambled behind closed doors to scrub Camilla's name from every upcoming ceremonial brief connected to Charlotte's introduction. Itinerary templates were destroyed and reprinted within hours. Briefing binders were quietly reissued to senior staff, their altered text reflecting a total removal of her long-planned advisory role. Assumed permissions that had stood for months dissolved into nothingness overnight. For Camilla, the quiet reality of the decision settled in with bitter clarity. There were no public statements, no dramatic walkouts, and no visible signs of anger in the palace halls. Yet behind closed doors, her private office began withdrawing dozens of proposed long-term initiatives that had quietly counted on her taking a dominant, visible hand in shaping the younger generation's public emergence. Yet, while the adults waged this silent war of power and protocol, the human cost was quietly mounting elsewhere in the residence. Children possess an undeniable instinct for hidden conflict, sensing the subtle shifts in tone, the sudden quiet in hallways when they walk past, and the rigid body language of the adults sworn to protect them. Princess Charlotte had noticed every bit of it. She saw the intense, hurried meetings behind glass doors. She felt the heavy, unnatural stillness that seemed to follow her father whenever he returned from the administrative wing. Late that afternoon, away from the watchful eyes of palace staff, Charlotte approached William in his private sitting room. She stood quietly beside his chair, clutching a small notebook, her eyes wide with a troubling mixture of confusion and anxiety. Looking up into her father's exhausted face, she asked a simple, heartbreaking question that cut through all the political games, institutional maneuverings, and legal battles. She asked if she had done something wrong, and if all the quiet arguing and serious faces were because of her. William froze, the weight of her innocent words landing like a physical blow. In that single, excruciating second, the entire battle over trust documents, royal traditions, and palace authority vanished. The high-stakes chess match between senior royals suddenly looked insignificant against the painful reality that his young daughter felt responsible for a Cold War she had never asked to be part of. How could anyone stand by and let an innocent young girl carry the guilt of complex adult power struggles happening behind her back? If you are willing to turn your back on this narrative right now without subscribing, you are choosing to close your eyes to the painful human price paid behind royal walls. Do not sit there and act like these emotional realities do not matter. Take action and subscribe to this channel this very second, because if you click away now, you will never learn the shocking truth of how Charlotte's single question completely reshaped William's strategy forever. William immediately pulled Charlotte into a close embrace, his voice thick with emotion as he looked her directly in the eyes. He assured her with absolute certainty that she had done nothing wrong, that she was deeply loved, and that every single choice he made was entirely about keeping her safe, happy, and free to grow up on her own terms. He realized in that poignant moment that securing legal victories over trust paperwork meant nothing if his daughter felt burdened by the crown before she even understood its weight. The battle line he had drawn against Camilla was no longer just about palace boundaries or royal precedent. It was about protecting a young girl's peace of mind from the crushing machinery of the institution. Charlotte nodded, resting her head against her father's shoulder, completely unaware that her simple, vulnerable question had just shifted William's entire perspective on the future. Charlotte asked one simple question that changed William's perspective completely. Prince William dropped the newly finalized legal binder onto his desk with a deliberate thud, his eyes fixed on the bold ink signatures that brought a grueling administrative battle to a close. Winning the legal dispute against Queen Camilla's office over the royal trust documents brought no sense of triumph. Looking at the official seal resting on the dark mahogany, William realized that securing a cold victory on paper meant nothing if it left his daughter feeling caught in the middle of a palace war. Protecting Charlotte meant far more than crushing a rival proposal. It required proving to his daughter that her dignity, her peace, and her choices would always come before royal maneuvering. Before the official ceremony began, William initiated a quiet, private gathering in a bright sunroom far from the press corps and senior advisors. There were no camera crews, no legal briefs, and no pre-scripted schedules dictating how people should stand. William created a space where Princess Charlotte was given total freedom to move at her own pace. When Queen Camilla entered the room, the atmosphere was fraught with unspoken history. Yet instead of forced protocol or defensive posturing, something unexpected happened. Charlotte looked up at her father, received a subtle, encouraging nod, and made her own choice to step forward and warmly greet Camilla. The distinction was profound. Charlotte acted out of her own free choice, completely free from obligation, pressure, or institutional instruction. Camilla observed the young princess with a quiet, reflective expression, finally grasping the true core of William's fierce stance. His resistance had never been driven by personal malice or a petty power struggle. It was driven by an unyielding commitment to give his child control over her own life inside a world that so often stripped it away. Shortly after midday, the heavy doors of the Royal Trust facility swung open to the blinding flashes of awaiting cameras. The public appearance unfolded with flawless precision. Prince William walked steadfastly beside Princess Charlotte, his presence a calm, protective shield against the overwhelming noise of the crowd. Media outlets immediately seized upon the sharp imagery, dissecting every glance and every step for subtle clues of hidden discord. Within hours, the palace issued a single, heavily restrained statement, emphasizing family unity and the successful launch of Charlotte's involvement with the trust. The statement completely avoided any mention of the intense legal battles, rewritten schedules, or fierce private confrontations that had occurred behind closed doors. As news commentators debated the significance of the appearance, William refused to participate in any internal victory celebrations. He ignored the congratulatory memos from his staff and brushed aside the political analysis from senior courtiers. Instead, his focus remained entirely centered on Charlotte, ensuring she felt grounded, loved, and completely secure as they returned home. If you are thinking about closing this video right now without subscribing, ask yourself how you can turn away after witnessing the deep, silent sacrifices required to protect a child from institutional control. Ignoring these hidden realities allows the quiet manipulation behind power to continue unchallenged. Do not turn a blind eye to the truth when it matters most. Take a second right now to subscribe to this channel, because if you leave now without joining us, you will miss out on the critical stories that expose what really happens behind those grand palace gates. The ultimate revelation of this entire episode lay buried deep within the confidential clauses of the rewritten Royal Trust paperwork. William had done far more than win a single tactical disagreement over a ceremonial escort. He had quietly established a revolutionary family precedent that altered royal protocol forever. The new legal framework permanently decreed that no external royal figure, regardless of rank or title, could ever claim ceremonial or advisory authority over Princess Charlotte without the express, written consent of her parents. More importantly, the documents contained an unprecedented clause stating that as Charlotte matures, her own direct personal consent will become the ultimate deciding factor in every major constitutional and public decision affecting her life. This was William's true, lasting legacy from the episode. He did not merely defeat a proposal from Queen Camilla, he fundamentally redefined how his daughter's future would be guarded, ensuring that her voice would grow stronger with every passing year. Yet, just as the dust began to settle over the royal trust dispute, a far more dangerous storm was already brewing inside the high walls of Windsor Castle. Secret audio recordings kept locked in a private palace vault for nearly 3 decades have unexpectedly surfaced, containing a recorded conversation between King Charles and his closest legal advisors that directly contradicts everything the public was told about Charlotte's future succession rights. In our next video, we expose the shocking contents of those hidden tapes, including the explicit name of the senior royal who secretly authorized the recordings, and the chilling reason why Prince William was never supposed to hear them. Subscribe right now so you do not miss a single second of the explosive revelation that is about to rock the monarchy to its very foundation.